Good day to everyone. I am Evangeline Hamisola, and today we are going to discuss one of the framework for ethical decision making. But before we proceed, let's have a quick recap on what is ethical decision making. So, in making good ethical decisions, it requires you to have trained sensitivity on dealing with ethical issues where you have to practice some methods to weigh things out. And these methods are being practiced to examine one's obligations and duties, to examine moral ideals, and in evaluating one's act if it would provide good consequences. And these methods are basically essential in ethical decision making because it guides you in exploring considerations of your action. By regularly practicing these methods, it will become familiar to you to the point that you refer this as your moral intuition, and you will take an action unconsciously without giving it a thought. For just example, you practice playing piano, and because you practice, you can play the piano well without even thinking. But as you can see on the presentation, you can't always say yes to your intuition. There are times that you will face complicated and unfamiliar situations that you need to think over to recognize the problem and enable for us to act accordingly, especially when you encounter dilemmas or yung mga conflict na nagre-result siya ng bad consequences kahit pa isa doon ang piliin mo. So, hindi talaga siya ideal na magamit lagi. Dahil nga, kapag sinunod mo siya, hindi ka na gaanong nakakapag-isip at hindi mo na pag-iisipan yung problema. Kaya, hindi ganun ka-accurate yung magiging sagot mo or pagtugon mo dun sa problema. Kaya, it is ideally na mag-isip muna, mag-reflect, at i-consider yung mga circumstances. Next, the more we face difficult ethical choice, the more we need to have a discussion and dialogues before making a decision. Katulad nga ng sabi ko, mas kailangan natin pag-isipan yun. And by doing so, we have to explore the problem and see different perspectives. Hindi lang dapat yung nakikita natin. Dapat we have to seek another factual information para mas maging open tayo sa pagpili ng decision. So, saan ba natin makikita yung perspective na yun? We can see it on the 3 frameworks on decision making, and mainly they are the consequentialist, duty, and virtue frameworks na makakatulong sa atin sa pagpili ng mas magandang approach sa paggawa natin ng decision. Pero unfortunately, just like what I've said on the introduction, the discussion will only highlight one of the frameworks, specifically the duty framework. So, this framework focuses on the duties and obligations of an individual in a given situation, where he only needs to consider his ethical obligations on what should and should not do. So, particularly, ang tawag doon ay ethical conduct, wherein it is defined na you are doing one's duty, and by doing that, you are doing the right thing. And the goal of this is to perform the correct action. For example, the Code of Ethics, it is a guidelines set for teachers about the right and wrong actions, kung ano ang dapat gawin at dapat hindi. So, ito yung parang following your duties according to what you promised on a contract. So, following your duty or your ethical obligations means it is a correct action. The advantage of this framework is it creates a system of rules that has consistent expectations of all people. So, if you are a doctor, you are expected to treat any people whether the patient is a criminal or not. Kasi, that's the job of the doctor. To treat people, to save people, kahit ano pa yung status niya sa buhay. So, this framework also has its limitations because it may appear cold and impersonal dahil nga hindi masyadong nagmamatter kung ano yung result, kung kahit pa it can do harm, even though it requires harm just to fulfill the duty, kailangan magawa yun. So, ayun, ang pinaka-importante dito ay magawa yung duty regardless of the consequences, whether it is bad or not. So, the action is ethically correct as long as your duty told you to do so. And ayan, thank you. Sana meron kayong natutunan. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for staying with me until the end.